Hi there, my name is Sandra and you're watching Christmas at the Schwowin's Nest. Welcome to my channel. For this project, I'm using some of these fence boards that were little scrap pieces. I cut them in half and then I created the angles on the top to make them look like picket fences. I'm using hot glue to put these together, and at first I thought I might have to use some screws or nails to help them stay together, but the hot glue is Gorilla Construction wood glue and they stuck together like the dickens. I made a mistake on one of the projects and had to use a chisel and a hammer to get it apart. So I definitely would recommend using some of the Gorilla Glue hot glue sticks if you ever find them. So I've got these three pieces glued together and now I'm going to create a little box in the front. The first thing I'm going to do is just put the bottom piece and I'm going to glue that to the very bottom of these three picket fences. So I'm just using again the hot glue. I'm going to put it together and then I'm going to add a couple of sides and a front. Now the front ends up being a little bit too low, but I was okay with that. It just looked a little rustic. If you're really fussy about things like that, then you could go ahead and do things a little differently. But I was happy with how these turned out. I made two of these little picket fence boxes along with all of the other projects. I did make two of each, and you'll see that at the end when I show you how I decorated them. I gave both of these little boxes 2 coats of white latex paint, just regular paint that you would use on your walls in your house. Then I used my Cricut Joy to cut out the word Merry, and in the other one, I'm going to do the word Joy. For this one, I added a few holly leaves, which also I cut out with my Cricut. And now I'm just going to take a brush and some black paint and just distress the edges a little bit all the way around, just to make it look a little bit more rustic. Once I was done with the edges, I just took my brush and whatever paint was left on it and dragged it across all of the surfaces in the same direction as the wood grain, just to give it even more of a distressed look. I think these little boxes are perfect to add a little bit of Christmas cheer into your home. You could use them just with a little bit of greenery or maybe some candles. I think they would look great on a counter or a hot cocoa bar with some hot chocolate packets, some tea, and maybe even some coffee pods. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank all of my current viewers and subscribers. I really love you guys and I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're new to my channel and you like what you see, that red subscribe button so you don't miss out. Next, I used some deck boards. They're much wider and much thicker than the fence boards, so I decided to make some houses out of these. I cut the angle at the top and then I found 2 other little pieces of scrap wood that I measured to fit to make a roof. I also cut those on an angle so you'd see that little angle piece on the end of the roof towards the bottom. These do stand up on their own, but I decided to add a base to them because probably what I'm going to do when I get home and I have more access to all of my Christmas craft supplies, I'll probably add a few little more things down at the bottom, maybe some greenery and some berries. But for now, I'm just going to leave them a little bit more plain. I'm going to do the body of the house in white, and then I'm going to do the base in black and the roof in a pioneer red. It's sort of a rustic red color. It's not a true Christmas red, but I think for these pieces, it turns out perfect. For this house, I found a pre-made graphic on Cricut Design Space, and I cut it out with my Cricut Joy, and now I'm just going to weed out all the pieces. I use transfer tape that I get from the dollar stores. It works just as good, if not better, than the Cricut or the name brand transfer tape. And I really like using it. It's super cheap, and because it has a good amount of sticky, not too much, I can use it over and over again. So I will probably use this same piece of transfer tape about 3 times today. I'm going to take some of this ribbon, which is burlap, and it has a bit of a black thread through it. I thought this would be a really nice embellishment on this house. I'm just going to glue it right down at the bottom to cover up any of my painting mistakes. I also did a Cricut design on this one, and I just used one of their pre-imaged Christmas trees, but I took a star and the words Merry Christmas and I sliced them out, and that created a stenciled look. On this house, I decided to use some regular jute twine. I wrapped it around the bottom portion of the sign about 4 or 5 times, making sure that it was nice and flat and they were all stacked on top of each other. Now I've moved up about a good 3/4 of an inch or so, and I'm going to do the same thing, just wrap it around. Now I'm going to add some black and white gingham to the center portion in between the jute twine, and then make a really cute bow and put that right in the center as well. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know I'm not really a bow fan, but lately I've been liking how they look, especially when you make them with gingham ribbon. I'm still not a fan of really big bows and ribbons and things, so you won't see me make too much of that, but I really love how this one turned out. Since I learned how to make a two-fingered bow, I am obsessed with them. They are really super easy to do, and for this one, I'm going to make it a 3-loop bow instead of a 2-loop bow. And if you're interested in learning how to make a two-finger bow like this, I will have a tutorial linked down in my description box, so you can go check that out, and it'll be a step-by-step tutorial of how to make this. For the final touch, I'm going to add this little sparkly white styrofoam ball. It just came off of a garland, and I think it adds the perfect finishing touch. For these, I decided to make some larger tags. So I just took the deck boards and I cut off some angles at the top and then glued them onto a base, painted the tag white and the base black. I'm now taking some designs from Cricut Design Space. This one I actually created myself, so I'll definitely have that available for you as a free printable on my website. To decorate this tag, I'm going to put 2 rows of this red and white gingham ribbon on, and then I'm going to use some pip berries that I pulled off of a garland. They are a brown stem, and I thought that would really blend in with my theme for today with all of these rustic projects. On the second tag, I've got this design. Again, this one will be available as a free printable on my website. That link is down in my description box. I used the gingham ribbon again and glued it onto the sign. What I'm going to do now is add a smaller piece and make that one stand up and down and have them joined together in the corner. So this looks more like a gift. I'm making another 2-fingered bow to put right in the corner. Then I added another one of those sweet little styrofoam balls that I have from the garland, and this project is done too. Here's a look at how all 4 of these pieces turned out. I'm really happy with what embellishments I put on them. I think it's just enough for a simple rustic holiday theme. My final wood pieces today are a couple of cutting boards. I cut this one out of a deck board and I sanded everything down. You can see all the really nice lines and some cracks, and I think these are going to make beautiful boards to display for the holidays. I did a couple of different styles. This one is a shorter one and it has sort of a concave kind of handle. The other one is really long and it has more of a rounded handle. This is the taller board with the more rounded handle. And for this one, I'm putting on a Christmas tree and Merry and Bright. Again, using my Cricut Joy, and I will have as many of these available as free printables for you. I'm using red and white gingham ribbon again, but this one's a little different. It's a little narrower and the pattern's a little larger. This one comes from the Dollar Tree. Every once in a while, I get lucky and I find the ribbon that I'm looking for at the Dollar Tree. I'm just going to wrap this around a couple of times on the bottom and on the top. And then after I was done, or at least I thought I was done, I just found that it needed a little bit of something extra. So I decided to paint the portion that was white underneath this ribbon right here black. And I really think that upped the look of this piece. And I think it's really, really pretty. I also added a triple loop bow to the top of this one and added one of those little foam balls from the vines as well. Since painting the bottom portion of this board black was an afterthought, I already had the ribbon glued on. So I used a piece of masking tape to completely cover the ribbon so I wouldn't schmutz on it. But I also left a little bit of a white stripe in between the ribbon and the black paint. With the second board, I decided to take the jute twine again, just tie it in a knot in the back and then wrap it around a whole bunch of times to just make it look really nice and full. I love these white pip berries in this garland, so I decided to incorporate that into this board. I thought it would go really well since the pip berry vine is brown. I'm just going to fold some of them and tuck them right underneath the twine, and then I just used a little bit of hot glue to hold them in place. I didn't like them hanging straight down, so I did give them a little bit of a curl just using my Cricut weeding tool, and that just helped to make it a little bit more festive. To embellish this one a little bit more, I made a 3-loop bow using the 2-finger method, just using some of this black and white gingham ribbon from Dollar Tree. I also added a little sponge ball to the center of the bow. The final touch for this one was adding a little bit of that burlap with the black threading through it to the bottom, and this one is finished. I really love how these boards turned out. I honestly have my mind blown whenever I see things online, especially on Wayfair. They're so expensive. This nativity is 15 inches by 16 inches high, and it's listed for $137. I cannot believe that some wood and metal decor would cost this much. This is a 10 by 10 square of MDF. It is plain because that's what I can pick up at my local Dollarama store, but this is the same thickness as most of the signs that you can get from the Dollar Tree. So if you want to grab one of those, you can just flip it around and use the back. The inspiration for the roof is a little bit off center, just like the Wayfair one. So that's what I'm duplicating here. And I'm going to be using a ruler that has a metal edge on it that will prevent me from cutting into my ruler because sometimes I get a little bit too overexcited with my utility knife. I'm going to score this a little bit a few times just to get a groove in there, and then I can move the ruler away and continue scoring until I can snap it off and it gets to be a nice clean cut. Looking at the description, Nativity, it did say that it was using rustic barnwood and different pieces, but I'm going to duplicate that just using some cardstock in different shades and styles of wood. I'm just going to be cutting them out about 1.5 inches wide. I've already cut them to the width of what I need, and I'm going to use 3 of each. You can use any glue you like to attach these pieces of cardstock to your board. I'm just going to use a regular glue stick, and I'm just going to be very generous with how much I put on. I'm going to start with this dark brown one, then I'm going to go with the grayish color, and then another brown one, and then I'm just going to repeat the pattern until I get to the top. I always wait for the glue stick to dry a little bit, and I make sure to press it down really well before I use my knife to just trim off the edges. I'm going to do the same thing with these garden stakes. These are going to become my 2 roof pieces. I'm going to cover both sides with some pieces of the paper. I'll repeat this process again to make 2 sides for the stable. This is a piece of MDF as well, but this is almost, I think it's about 5/8 of an inch. It's quite thick, and this is something that I had cut previously using my miter saw. I'm going to just give this a whitewashed effect with some white acrylic paint. I'm just going to go over it very roughly and make sure that some of that brown underneath peeks through. I'm going to use hot glue to assemble everything together. And first I'm going to do the 2 pieces of the roof, and then I'll add on the sides. I decided to put the roof pieces and the side pieces flush with the back of the stable, just because then I'll have a really nice overhang on the top and the sides. I've got the stable fully assembled, so now I'm just going to use hot glue and glue it right onto the base. I used my Cricut Explorer with a deep cut blade to cut out these boxes. So these are shapes that I used gift boxes that came from the Dollar Tree. I just used the plain white bottom, and I cut 2 of each because I wanted to glue them together, make them a little bit thicker so they're not quite so flimsy. I will leave the free printable for all of my little people and animals here on my website. The link for that is down in my description box. I'm going to use these bamboo sticks. They're about the same width and thickness as regular popsicle sticks. And gluing them on the back is just going to give this cardboard a little extra support because of course I'm going to need these to stand up. When it comes to the animals, I'm going to have to trim the piece lengthwise as well, so it is a little skinnier so I can put it on their little legs. So you'll see me here, I'm just going to take a measurement here and then snip off what I need for the length, but I'm also going to then just take this one and snip it in half lengthwise. Now that it's skinnier, I'll be able to glue them in place, and that will give my little donkey some extra support too. These figures in the inspiration were made from metal, so I'm just going to use some gray paint. I believe this is Parisian Gray by Folk Art Home Decor Chalk Paint. I'm just going to give everything one coat. Then I'm going to take my silver acrylic paint and a makeup sponge and just dab all over it to give it a really rough galvanized look. I like to pounce with the makeup sponge, but I turn it in different ways so the square edges that you see are in different directions, and that just really helps to make it look more realistic. I wanted my characters to have even more support, so I'm taking just a small piece, probably not quite an inch, of that stick that I used before. The popsicle sticks will work fine for this as well. A little bit of hot glue, and then I'm gluing it on so it is a support piece for the back. So basically, it's like an easel back. Now it's time for assembly. I'm going to put glue on that little easel back. This is the baby Jesus in his cradle. And I'm going to just tuck it right into the center. Make sure that that little kickstand at the back is touching down, and that will hold it in place. Look at how cute. I'm going to continue adding all of them: Joseph, Mary, the donkey, and the little lamb. Right here, I noticed that the lamb's little easel back or kickstand was way too long, so I just took my miter shears and cut it down so you wouldn't notice them as much. I think I did the same thing with the donkey. Yes, here we go. Just trimming off that little edge so they wouldn't stick out so far. The inspiration piece also had a star, so I'm just using those sticks again. I'm going to trim off the ends, put them into a point, and then just shape all of my pieces until I get the look of the star that I like. I'm going to use hot glue to glue them all together, and then they're going to get a coat of the silver acrylic paint. I'm going to skip the gray because I want more of just a shiny surface for the star. Once the star was dry, I glued it onto the peak of the stable, and this project is done. This next project isn't that much money. It's only $28, but it's a string tree. It's a piece of wood, it's some twine, some nails, and I know I can dupe this for probably less than a buck. I already had this piece of scrap wood cut into a house shape. I know the inspiration is just a square, but I thought this would be really fun and I would be able to make a little bit of a taller tree this way. I'm giving it one really just rough coat of some white acrylic paint. Remember, when you're doing string art like this, you need to make sure that your nail is tall enough to accommodate the amount of layers you want to use. I'm using these 1-inch panel nails, and I think those will be enough. I'm banging them in probably so there's still about 3/4 of an inch sticking out, and I like to use my needle nose pliers to hang onto the nail so I don't accidentally smack my fingers. I'm just going to eyeball this. I'm not going to measure anything, but if you need to measure, go right ahead. You can even draw a little template for yourself if you need to. I like to hang on to the nail with my needle nose pliers. That prevents me from smacking my fingers, which I tend to do quite a bit lately. What I'm going to do is start with 4 across. The 4 in the center that I'm doing now will become the trunk of the tree. And then I'm just going to continue on adding nails in a tree design, so in a triangle, and going slightly above and in for each row. And here you can see the tree shape starting to come together. I'm leaving about a good inch, inch and a quarter, maybe in between each of the rows, and going in about 1/4 of an inch each time. Once I got to the top, I just did one more nail for the top peak. And I'm going to do something a little bit different. I thought it would be really fun to have a little star at the top of the tree. So I'm going to be adding more nails. I'm going to do 2 of them sort of a little bit further down from the original peak of the tree. You can see me doing those here. Then I'm going to do another one a little further in. So I'm just going to try and in my head do the shape of a star. It ends up being sort of 2 arrows pointing at each other with an extra nail up at the top. It's hard to explain, but once you see the finished product, I think you'll get it. I will leave a template for this tree on my website under the free printables. The link for that is down in my description box. I'm starting off just using some thicker jute twine. And if you have some thinner twine, that would be fine too. I know the inspiration had green, but I didn't have a whole lot of green. I've got a little bit that I'm going to be adding later, but I decided to just start with the regular jute twine. I just started off going around in a square and then I'm going to start crisscrossing. And what I want to do is just push the twine down every time I go around the nail. I'm kind of pushing it down. And then I'm also going in the opposite direction. So you can kind of see me looping and then spinning it. It's really hard to describe. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. Once I thought I had enough on the trunk, I started with the Christmas tree nails. I'm going to just go around, and then when I get to the other side, I'm going to go around it from the top and then bring it around the bottom and then cross over. So around the one on the left, around the one on the right, but bring it down and cross it over. It really doesn't matter what type of design you want to do. This is just how I happened to start it, and I just continued on with it because I liked the look of it. Once I got to the top nail, I just looped it around once and then started going in the opposite direction. So now I'm just going to be looping around the right-hand side, which is the bottom of what you can see. And here you can see me trying to figure out which way to go. So I'm going to go around the bottom and then cross it over. Loop around that nail, go around the bottom of the top nail, and then loop that across and down. Once I was done with this row, I repeated the first one more time. So I had 3 layers of jute twine on the tree. Once I got to the top of the third one, I trimmed off the twine and hot glued the end in place. I've got some light green hemp cord that came from the Dollar Tree in the springtime, and it was part of my stash, so I just decided to use it just to bring a little bit of pop of color to this rustic tree. I'm making just a regular loop, and then I'm going to just hook it onto that first knot there, tie it into a nice knot, making sure that it's really nice and snug, and then trimming off the excess. I'm going to go up all the way once and then come back down with the green and then trim it and hot glue it down at the bottom. Here's how my tree looks so far. I really like it. It's a little different than the inspiration, but I think it's a little more colorful, even though it's still on the rustic side. Now I'm going to work on the star, and I decided to use this sort of off-white and red baker's twine. This is something that I picked up at Michael's at the beginning of the Christmas season. I'm going to start by tying a knot on the top nail, and then I'm just going to do the best I can to make sure I get a star shape. I wanted to make sure that this would be nice and secure, so I really wrapped it all the way around each nail. So I went full circle in each nail, changed my direction, and then went to the next area. So I'm going down on an angle, in towards the center, out towards the bottom point, then around the top of the Christmas tree, down to the next point, and then again into the center more, wrapping it around, pushing it down with my fingernail to make sure I have enough space. Here I'm figuring out which direction I need to go based on what the other side is, and then back up to the top. I did this a couple more times, and then I crisscrossed a little bit to make the star a little bit more interesting. Well, I still wasn't done with my colors. I decided to grab some of this really thin white hemp rope and I decided to go all the way around once with everything, and that just gave it a little bit more of a brighter look. I really love how this turned out, and if you try some string art, let me know how it goes. I'd love to see it. It was a little tricky because I'd never done this before, but I kind of figured it out as I went along. Once I got to the top, I thought it would be fun to change direction and sort of make the tree look like it has triangles on it to make it look like a real tree. I'm just taking the white and I'm actually going in the opposite direction now than the way I went up. And I really love how this turned out. It's again different from the inspiration, but I'm just putting my own spin on it. For the last detail, I'm taking some of the red and off-white or creamy colored or rustic colored baker's twine, and I'm just tying a little double knot. I'm trimming off the little ends of it, and then I'm going to hot glue it and make them look like little ornaments on the tree. I thought this was a really cute addition to the tree, and I really love how it turned out. I think I might be a little bit addicted to string art, so you might see some more coming in the near future. Let me know what you think of my first attempt. Here's the inspiration for my third project. I thought this was just so simple and rustic. It is a laser cutout tree, and I know those are expensive machines to have, so I totally understand the $70 price tag. However, that's not something that I would ever spend. I found this part of a drawer that I took apart in my stash. I loved the dovetailing effect on the bottom. It's just beautiful. I'm going to leave it this color because, again, I really like the color of it. I went to my Cricut again and cut out using the same type of gift box as my first project, this very simple tree. I'm just going to go ahead and use hot glue to glue this down, and any of the little limbs that need to be secured down, I will do that for them. I decided to leave the tree white because I think it's a really beautiful contrast to the color of this wood. Next, I'm going to take some of those garden stakes and just cut off two little thin pieces, and I'm going to glue those on top of this first tree and then glue the other tree on top of that. That's going to give it more of a three-dimensional look. It's not going to be exactly as the laser cut, but I think it comes pretty darn close. If you don't have a Cricut, I know cutting all of these little angles on this type of tree would be a little tricky, but you can definitely just use a more simple tree to get the same type of effect. For this DIY, I'm going to start by taking two of these larger tumbling tower blocks and glue two of them together. Then I'm just going to set those aside. This is a scrap piece of wood from one of the Dollar Tree Easter signs. I'm just trying to get some of the rest of the paper off of it, just so it'll have a smooth finish at the end. I'm going to use this red and black buffalo check scrapbook paper that I picked up at Michael's, and I'm going to cut a piece to cover the front and the back of this board. To glue them on, I'm just going to use a glue stick and just put lots of it on and then put the paper on, smooth it out, and there won't be any wrinkles or bubbles. I have been using glue sticks with paper for a while now, and I really love the effect of it, much better than Mod Podge. Once the glue's had a chance to dry, I'm just going to take my craft knife and just cut off any of the excess all the way around and making sure I get both sides of the paper. I created two designs, one for the front and one for the back, and they will be available as free printables on my website. I cut them out using Cricut Smart Vinyl, which I love now because it's just so much easier to not have to worry about a cutting mat. And I'm using the Dollar Tree transfer tape, but I did fuzz it a little bit because I wanted to make sure that it wasn't too sticky, that it would take some of the paper off, and it worked really well for this project. Now that I've got my designs, I'm just going to take a sanding block from the Dollar Tree and just very gently go around the edges of the paper just to rough it up a little bit and give it more of a distressed look. After I put these decals on, I thought I should have done a few little snowflakes as well, but then I took my chalk paint marker and I just started doing dots on the paper, kind of just sporadically, not in any pattern or anything, just to give it the look of some snow falling. For the other side, I decided to do just little bunches of dots. This made it look like kind of snowballs, but almost like little stars. And I made them different sizes and just, again, put them all over, not in any particular pattern, but just made it look really pretty. Using hot glue, I'm just going to put some on the bottom of the sign and place it in the middle of the two tumbling tower blocks that are laying on the wide side. Then I'll repeat the process for the other tumbling tower blocks. Then I'll have some on the top and some on the bottom, and it'll kind of make it look like a pennant sign. I wanted the wood to look a little bit more rustic, so I'm just taking a wash with burnt umber and some water, and I'm just going to brush it all over the blocks. I didn't think I was going to add anything to this sign, but the more I looked at it, the more I thought it needed a little something. So I grabbed some of these little frosted pine cones that you can get at the Dollar Tree. I don't know if they're available this year, but I did have a whole bunch of them from my stash last year. I added two larger ones to the top and then added a tiny little bit of greens in between each of the pine cones. And I really love this sign. I think it's one of my favorites. This last project is using one of these long planks that you can get at the Dollar Tree and two of the larger size tumbling tower blocks. I'm just marking off where I need to cut on the long end and also on the short end. Using a utility knife and the square from the Dollar Tree, which comes in super handy, I'm just going to go ahead and score this about 4 or 5 times, and then I'll be able to just snap it loose. Using hot glue, I'm going to attach the tumbling tower blocks to the sides of the plank. It would have been helpful if I would have put two planks together. It was a little tricky trying to get some of that glue not to show so much. So I think if I was creating this project again, I would use two of the Dollar Tree planks and just glue them together just to make a more solid base. Then I'm going to just add some of these half round beads and make little feet for my little tray. I started by giving this a couple of coats of my white chalk paint, but in the end, I do something different to it. So if you like the white, go for it. If not, just leave the wood as is because we're going to end up staining it at the end anyway. I've got two of these wooden Christmas trees that I picked up from Michael's, and I think they were $1.50 each, so I thought that was a really good deal. I'm just taking some of this spackling and filling in the holes on both of them. I've got a color in here called Hauser Green. I don't know what that means, but it's kind of a moss color. I'm adding some water to it because I want to create a wash or a stain out of it, and that's what I'm going to use to apply onto the Christmas trees. I'm going to do the front and the back of the trees, making sure I get the sides too. This is probably one of my favorite colors of green. I use it all year round on my projects. For the little tree trunks, I did the same thing, just using some of my burnt umber, and this paintbrush was still wet, so I just dipped it into the lid and put a little bit of a wash on the tree trunks. These are the same wooden stars that I used on my first project, and I'm just going to stain a couple of them front and back because I'm going to put this on the top of each of the trees. So here's the mess I made with this white bottom tray portion. I took that green and I dry brushed it, and man, was it ugly. So this is where the stain came into play. I'm using a walnut stain and a dry brush, and I'm going to let some of the white peek through, but I'm pretty much going to cover all of this with the brown stain, which is what I should have done when the wood was still in its raw state. It would have looked a lot better, but I'm still happy with how it turned out. I'm just going to use hot glue to apply my stars, and then I'm going to hot glue the Christmas trees to the side of this little tray, and I have created a napkin holder if you haven't already guessed. This will be a really cute addition to my Christmas table this year. I hope you enjoyed these Timber Tuesday projects for Christmas. They're some of my favorites, and I hope you love them as much as I do. Thanks so much for spending some of your time with me today. Merry Christmas!